You're listening to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. This episode features Utilizing Co-op, a session that was presented by Jenny Cohen of Waucoma Bookstore at Children's Institute 2019 in Pittsburgh.
This is the Utilizing Co-op session. My name's Jenny Cohen. I'm with Waucoma Bookstore in Hood River, Oregon. A few reminders, please turn off your cell phones so they don't ring. Thank you to Baker and Taylor for being our lead sponsor. Also, please remember to fill out the feedback or the review in the app afterwards. I'll remind you again afterwards. And let's get started. I have a lot to cover. I'm hoping at the end we'll have enough time for kind of a roundtable and questions. So first off, I'm just wondering who currently is doing co-op? So a few, maybe about half. Who's not doing co-op? Okay. And then I have an old kind of presentation of this that I did at PNBA several years ago, maybe about almost 10 years ago now. So I'm wondering if anybody has seen that old version. Okay, nobody. Okay, so this is an updated version of co-op. I'm hoping for you that don't do co-op, you'll see the need of why you need to do co-op and the value in doing it. First, a little bit about me. Here's our overview. I'm going to kind of explain what it is, what the publishers are looking for, how to find out about it, how to do co-op, and then I have some tools and resources at the end, and then we can talk at the end again, questions, roundtables, maybe people have ideas to add on too. So first off, my store is located in Hood River, Oregon. It's an hour east of Portland, Oregon. We are 2,000 square feet. My husband grew up in Hood River, so we purchased the store from a family friend in 2008. We have 8 part-time employees, so full-time equivalent would be about 3. We're in a rural area, so not very big area. We get a lot of customers that are local, but we also get a lot of customers that are tourists. This is Mount Hood, and this is my town in front of it. So, in terms of co-op money, I learned from Patty, who had been already at the store for a very long time, and she did it with paper. I should also mention that I used to be a financial analyst, so I like numbers, I like money, I like free money. As Patty taught me, it's free, she called it free money. So why not use it? Why not do it? So when I last did this presentation, and I think it was in 2011, I'd only owned the store for 3 or 4 years, and I had booked out already $42,000 in co-op. So I was curious as to so what have I been doing the last several, years now? It was a lot. And I should also mention that my husband's a software engineer and my father-in-law's a tax accountant. So again, we're a very numbers-oriented sort of family. We do have a little bit when you look at the numbers, a little bit of a delay. I tend to book a lot of bill my co-op in September, October, November, December, so that those credits are rolling in during our slow season in January, February, March, and April. So yes, it adds up to be quite a lot. On 2012, I thought it was interesting. That's when Random House started doing their automatic co-op program, and some publishers followed suit. So the variances afterwards are a little bit different, with some publishers doing away with newsletter co-op and just doing the automatic credit. 2017, well, there's a lot of money there because my son was born on December 28th, 2016, and so I was at home for most of the time. He was, because it was so busy at the store, so I was doing a lot of co-op at home while my staff was selling books. They did not want me to give birth on the sales floor. For those of you that are new to co-op, so what is co-op? It's the shared cost of advertising. It's working with your vendor, and for us, our publishers, to promote books in our store. It's money, so money in the form of credits on your statement. And under other industries, like our local chamber, we'll do co-op advertising where we're going in to share the cost of advertising, or they'll get a better rate for us to do a bigger ad for our town and say like Sunset Magazine and that sort of thing. So why claim co-op? For me, the biggest thing we realized, besides increasing sales, trying to do sales on a title that maybe I wouldn't have originally taken, it was improving our bottom line. So the biggest thing for us is, as we looked at the history, and every year we look at our year-end, the amount of profit we made each year was relatively close to the amount of co-op I did, or more. So really, you can't leave that money on the table. If you're not doing co-op, please do co-op. Really, it's really, I feel it's really integral to the bottom line of your store. So Abacus. Sorry for the formatting. My presentation didn't quite translate over to the recording software. So out of the kind of 300-ish companies that participate in Abacus, only 196 were reporting co-op dollars. So there are stores that are out there that are not taking advantage of their co-op dollars. This is my Abacus data. So in comparison to other stores, I'm doing a lot more co-op. And what I would love to see is for all stores and most profitable stores, I want to see that percentage go up. Yeah. I actually didn't realize that, and I was like, oh, I need updated Abacus data. Let me go look at the reports. And so thank you, Dan, for tracking co-op dollars now. So this is an older statement, but I love to show this statement when I do co-op because this was a statement that had a lot of co-op dollars on it. So newsletter. So it's a negative balance. I'm not owing the publisher anything. For this one, this was in March. So, I don't have a lot of money. There's not as many tourists coming in. So I'm using those credits to pay my bills.
Can you step back for a second? You keep saying credits.
Yeah, so when you do co-op, you're not actually being issued money. Like, they're not cutting you a check. They're giving you, they're giving you on your statement, or I should call it more, it's a credit memo. So in terms of accounting, when you're paying your bills, you're paying an invoice, but when you get a credit memo, you can take that credit memo to go against your invoice to pay the bill.
But suppose you pay cash.
You wouldn't be paying cash. So if you had enough credits, it's your invoice minus that credit memo, and then whatever's left over, you're paying cash or check or credit or whatever. We can have a side conversation about QuickBooks and invoicing and that sort of thing. Also, another reason why I would love to have batch, but that's a whole nother conversation. So yes, this had a lot of credits on it. So again, the co-op really helps out when we're cash poor in the slow season. There's not as many locals in town. They've left to go somewhere warmer than Hood River. There's not a lot of tourists. It's right after Christmas. So it's really between co-op and returns, it makes our life a little bit easier during the slow season. Again, as I said earlier, the profit for every year has been equal or higher than the amount of co-op we've done each year. So what do publishers get out of co-op? A lot of it is direct marketing. You'll often see, if you're going through the adult advice catalogs, ones that have promo titles like, if you buy 6 copies, you'll get $25 or $50 credit. So they're trying to promote books that they really are behind and trying to get them into your store. They want to see front list titles advertised in your newsletter, your social media. They want to see them front of table. They want to see them displays. It's a way for them to get books that maybe you wouldn't have purchased into your store.
So does that count as co-op, like for Abacus reporting? Because someone told me that didn't. Like on Edelweiss, if they say buy 6, you get $50. Someone told me that didn't count as co-op.
So the question is, does the promo co-op count as co-op in Abacus? I'm not sure. I track it as co-op, so it's in my co-op number when I report to Abacus. I think it is. Well, Dan can follow up on it, so we can.
My boss does Abacus, not me, but I do the buying. So she was there asking me what those numbers were, and I He hadn't told me to track them previously.
Okay, we'll get back to that because I'm gonna for the people that have never done this before, I'll talk you through kind of things you need to consider, who should be communicating, that sort of thing. So how do you find out about co-op? I am notorious for every time I have an appointment, every time I talk to my rep. So can you remind me what the co-op is, or what's the co-op this year? What are the rules? You know, how much do I have a newsletter? Blah, 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 blah. Every single time I talk to a rep. So when you order, when you're planning an event, anytime you're doing any sort of advertising, when you do a display, take pictures of your display. Sourcebooks makes it really easy to do it. I just take a picture and send it to Heidi. Always keep that co-op idea in the back of your mind because it's this money. I mean, you're already doing all these things, so you might as well get paid for it. And also keep your staff involved and informed. So what do I mean by that? So if you're a buyer, and so I should explain, my husband and I do the bulk of the buying, the bookkeeping, a lot of the stuff that's on here. But in bigger stores, there's probably going to be you're going to need like a chain of communication. So the buyer is someone that's obviously doing the buying, the promo co-op, the 6 copies for $50 or whatever. Then you have your co-op person. Maybe that's a different person that's overseeing the whole process and is communicating with all these different people. Then you have someone that's a newsletter, webmaster person where you're going to be wanting to give them copies of the titles that you want to promote in your newsletter. Maybe for me, that's me also. Or your events manager. So if your event manager is going to order books or they're going to set up an event, they should really be finding out how much co-op is available for that event. With some publishers, there's no co-op money. Other publishers, there's a lot of co-op money. So I guess consistently asking. My staff knows, we have directions written up on how to put the co-op titles on our website and our newsletter. So if it's a little bit slower in the afternoon on a Saturday or Sunday, I just email them a list of co-op titles and they put them on our website or put them in our newsletter. Again, so we went over this a little bit. And this presentation will be available on BookWeb also. So what about those weird co-op rules? I know, they change them every year. They're long and lengthy. It's a lot of paragraphs to process. Don't let that scare you. I just go back to my rep and say, what exactly can I have this year? What kind of pool co-op do I have? What kind of newsletter co-op do I have? Just keep it simple. Again, I can't stress the communication about asking what's available from your publisher because there's times where you're like, oh, I didn't even know that was available. I'm always finding out about new opportunities. Keep a folder with your co-op notes. And then I would say, if it's possible, I know there's third-party services that do co-op claims. If it's possible for you to do it yourself. Susanna Herman's at Oblong Books and Music. She says she does about 1 to 2 hours a month on co-op and it's very well worth her time. So the types of co-op. We have pool versus non-pool. Pool's co-op is typically a percentage of last year's previous sales. You need to have a account with your publisher to be eligible for that. And then there's non-pool co-op, or what they also call exempt co-op. That's co-op that's in addition to pool co-op. So newsletter co-op would be in addition to the pool co-op. Promo title co-op, which is the co-op that you get when you order. Event co-op, that's all in addition usually to your pool. Again, varies by publisher. Keep asking them questions. Changes from year to year. Keep asking them questions. So again, the pool co-op. So the other thing to keep in mind is a lot of bigger publishers distribute smaller publishers, and their co-op is separate. So Hachette's my example here. Disney has their own newsletter co-op, so that's an additional $1,000 that you can do, in addition to what Hachette has for their newsletter. It goes through the same person because your rep is the same, but that's more money. So indirect pool co-op, those little lines were a little cross out. that didn't get translated. In the past, I used to have indirect pool co-op from Ingram, Baker & Taylor, and Partners West. Partners West was the wholesaler on the West Coast. So I would get reports from them. Those reports of what I purchased from them by publisher. Every year, those reports were available at a certain time of the year, and then I gave those reports to the bigger publishers. And then there's newsletter co-op. So these are titles that are advertised in your newsletter or on your website.
On the indirect co-op, I was just told, if you do it, Baker & Taylor is due by Monday. You need to ask for your letter from Baker & Taylor for this year's co-op.
Okay, so the question is, someone was told that for Baker & Taylor co-op, indirect co-op, that it was due by a certain date, which is supposedly this Monday. That is true. I would say a lot of publishers usually have a due date, whether it's, I think usually the reports, at least for Ingram, are usually due and are available online in February. I always ask, I keep asking or checking back, and I'll show you how to do that here. And then with Baker & Taylor,
It's for their closing.
yeah. So for their closing, I think is what you're saying.
If you want it for this year, you have to ask for it by Monday.
By Monday, okay. That I didn't know. Thank you for that. So there's author event co-op. So most of that co-op is usually a set amount. Sometimes it may be a percentage of retail cost of the books. So, and sometimes for that $150 or $200 or maybe a minimum purchase. I think I want to say it's Workman, where you can get anywhere between $75 or $150 in co-op if you buy 25 books. And then some of the publishers do require you to book the event through the publicist in order to qualify for that co-op. So always check. And some of the reps are creative about that, so work with your rep about that. And then there's, again, what I've already mentioned several times, instead of a promotional co-op. So buying a certain number of books when you're doing your frontlist buying, and then it's often $15, $20, or $50 for buying those 6 to 10 books or whatever their minimum requirement is. So it's really easy to get caught up in the co-op titles. Make sure the co-op titles fit your store and do the math. Again, so here's co-op deal number 1. So $50 newsletter co-op for 5 copies of a hardcover title that retails for $25. My husband and I are constantly doing math. So if you're assuming a 46% discount, it's going to cost you $13.50 per book. You multiply that by 5. That's your normal cost of purchasing that book wholesale is $67.50. So if it's $50 co-op and you deduct that $50 from the normal cost, it'd be $17.50 per book or $3.50 per book. So when you sell 2 books without co-op, you make $23. So again, if you sell 2 books with co-op, then you would make a 43% or $43 profit. So, a lot of these are standard deals. It just, most often what I see in Edelweiss is 6 copies for $25, 12 copies for $50. So you need to figure out what works for your store. Once you figured out that math, then you'll have an idea once you continually start to order.
Do you want to do questions at the end, or are we doing questions as we go?
Why don't we save them for the end? Let's see, what time is it? Okay. So again, here's another newsletter co-op deal for 10 copies of a paperback title. That's $15 retail. Usually I will do this if it's a recommended title for my staff. The thing to remember with co-op is that even though it's a co-op deal, your money is tied up in inventory. So, you want to be, for us, when we purchase books, we tend to do more co-op deals in the summer or in the fall when we know we're selling for Christmas. If it's going to be something that's coming out in January, I'm probably not going to do that co-op deal unless someone on staff really recommends that book. Or they have a really good sales history. So again, here's an example. My think this might be a little bit hard to read. My reps have been really good about tagging co-op. You can't read that on the bottom. It says display co-op. I think for $50 is one of the tags on the bottom. And so the nice thing is that my reps are tagging the ones that are co-op titles. They usually tend to do co-op titles that are like a big deal sort of book that they really want to have a push for to get into stores. The other nice thing about them tagging these is that I can go back into my order and decide whether I want to decrease or increase my co-op title numbers before I submit the order to them. So I can filter by their tag. I also have a tag for myself that I use that's just co-op. So then I can filter through that, and with those tag titles, I print out a list of those titles and give them to Mir because he does the QuickBooks. And so he can keep track of whether we've received that credit for that co-op title yet. I'll get to that, more of that. This one was, I just wanted to show this. This is like a no-brainer. This is an unbelievable deal. This was in the fall Penguin adult titles, I think, drop-ins catalog. It's a mass market, and they're offering you $25 to buy 6 copies. So at 97 cents per copy with the co-op, it's a strippable title. It's sort of a, why not? I mean, and it's an author that usually sells pretty well. I was just really surprised, actually, that he even offered this. But so again, do the math. Figure out what works for you. So how can it be used? Oftentimes, you just get a credit, and so you can use the co-op for whatever you want. I do a series of ads sometimes for First Friday signings or for holiday books. Just be really creative. Newsletters, direct mailing. Usually with newsletter, they require a 50-word minimum. At one point, the previous person that had done co-op for our bookstore thought it needed to be original copy, and then when I kept talking to people, they're like, well, you can just use our copy. So marketing's already putting out that copy in Edelweiss. You can just copy and paste that into your newsletter. You can copy and paste it onto your website. Super easy. Now you don't have to write original content. So on our website, we have a featured books page where I can just go in and so this is Scholastic spring summer 2019. I can just drop in all the ISBNs. They have I want to call it bulk ISBN list now, where I can just copy and paste all the ISBNs in, and then I can go in and also edit and drop in the copy. Doesn't take that long. Newsletters take me a little bit longer. In-store displays. So obviously I've owned my store for a long time. I recycled some of the photos from the previous presentation. I'm advertising it on the front counter. You can charge for that. I advertise in our store, all the new releases always go onto the front tables. Then they flow onto what we call section tables each week when we replace with new ones, and then they go on the shelf. So they're getting a lot of face time on those. This I saw at the airport one time. So obviously they're advertising a specific book. If you bought it, I like this one, the Hunger Games cake. So yeah. Be creative. And last time I did this presentation, I did it with my Scholastic rep, and she was just telling me all these sort of things that, just ask your rep, can I do this? What about this? Some of the reps are like, well, yeah, that sounds great. Go ahead. So the other thing I want to go over is there is definitely a difference between requests and claiming your co-op. So just because you've requested or asked maybe your rep or whoever you're working with at the publisher that you want to do this and get co-op for it doesn't mean that you've claimed a co-op. So Macmillan's usually my example because they have contract numbers that they assign. So in this situation, I was asking Peggy, who was my kids rep at the time, these are the titles I want to do for spring and summer in our newsletter. This is the total amount I want. Here's the titles and the ISBNs. Can you create a contract number for this? So this is Macmillan's contract control number. And they like to have that number on all your co-op claims. I would say they're the only one that has this system. Each publisher kind of has their own different system. Again, this was previously when Hachette used to ask for permission. Hachette now, as long as it's their titles within their imprints, you can pick whatever you want and then just submit this co-op claim. This was this is the old Edelweiss picture, but I basically went into Edelweiss, tagged the ones that I wanted to use for the newsletter, and then selected all the ones with the tag and emailed my rep, and this is what the rep was getting. So co-op rate sheet, I have one. Frankly, I don't really use it much. I've only had a couple publishers ask for it. In mine, there were so many great resources on BookWeb and education. I kind of modeled mine after one that was on there. Again, I've only used it a couple of times in the time that I've had my store. You can also do it in email. So this was specifically for a local author, PGW publicist. She's like, well, what are you going to do? And so my rep said, just throw it into an email and send it to me and the publicist. And that way it was a formal request, and then they could approve it.
I'm sorry, are you setting these rates? So you're telling them what it costs for your sandwich board to have their work on it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So honestly, the co-op rate sheet, I was like, I have no idea. Like, we already do it anyways. I guess $50 sounds good, So yeah, you can, I feel like $50 is a standard sort of number, $25. Some publishers have gone down to $25 per newsletter tile. So I was like, well, I can just pull that across.
We can do that?
You're advertising, so what are you going to charge the publisher to put their books out in your space? You're already paying your staff member to do a display. When it comes to automatic co-op, I'll get to that because my reps really want to see what we're doing, and because there's not this formal process anymore of requesting that sort of thing, and it's just an automatic co-op pool now, I send them pictures. And the reason why I send them pictures of what we're doing is to show that we're putting their titles out in the front of the store on displays. They want to be able to show people in New York that are the marketing people how it's being displayed. So they're always looking for that sort of thing. And with the automatic co-op, it's so much easier. And I'll get to that. We take pictures of all our displays when I put out our new releases, and it's just part of our new release process. So that way, my reps, when it comes to time where I need to renew my contract, whether it's with Simon & Schuster or Penguin Random House or whatever, and they're having that discussion with their managers about, well, are they really doing what they need to do to fulfill this automatic co-op contract that they've signed up for, or program that they signed up for? It shows that we're doing all this stuff in our store. Again, I'll get back to that one. So how to claim co-op? I could talk about co-op. I'm just checking time forever. So establish a communication system between your buyers, co-op writers, and the bookkeeper. From my husband and I, since we're a smaller store, it's a little bit easier. So anytime I claim co-op, I print out a copy of the letter that I'm doing. It will list all the advertising we've done, all the titles that we're claiming co-op for, the ISBNs, any other relevant information, our account number, and then I keep copies of those. I print them out, and he's got this file folder where all of our bills and anything that needs to go into QuickBooks goes. And it's sorted by publisher. So if I did a claim, say for Macmillan, I'll print out a copy of that claim, put it in his folder, and that's important because he does the QuickBooks. So he's waiting for that credit to come through. And if that credit hasn't come through, he, every week, will write on the top of that co-op claim letter. Sometimes it's been 4 weeks that he's touched that piece of paper again, whether or not we've received that co-op. So make sure you have a sort of tracking system, because what we were finding is that we were doing a lot of promo co-op, and it wasn't necessarily always getting credited to our account. And it can add up for quite a lot. So it used to be that publishers wanted your co-op claim on letterhead. That's kind of how I learned how to do it, old school. But really, you can take this and make it a lot simpler and just put all the same information into an email. Here's one that Susanna did. Her reps all get her newsletter because they're automatically already subscribed to it, so they'll automatically see what title she's advertised. And so she just literally puts her claim in an email and sends it to her rep. Again, when there was more indirect pool, I was very specific about what pool I was pulling from and how much I was requesting and the total amount and what titles I was doing. And again, with Macmillan, I was referencing all the contract numbers on the top. Again, you could do this in an email.
And then do you attach your photos to this, or you just send the photos as they're happening?
So the question is, do you attach your photos to this? Yes, if I'm doing a display. If it's email newsletter, that blue line is a link to my newsletter or the website where I've shown it. So that's my proof. HarperCollins does a grid. So it's very specific to each account. So ask your sales rep for a copy of this. And it's pretty easy. Again, you just need to show that what you're claiming. They do like you to highlight, because you're using the same Excel file over and over again. Highlight whatever's new that you're claiming. And again, follow up on your missing credits. So my husband took a picture of this credit memo. I want my money, and I want all of it. That's just how we are. So I know it's only for $62, but $62, if you do that repeatedly, adds up. My Norton rep was really great about, following up with the co-op person there at Norton, and we finally got the credit in 2018. It took a few emails, but we got the money. So my husband just had to take a picture of it and send it to my rep and say, "Look, we finally got the credit memo." Wow. Also, find a system that works for you and your bookkeeper. The communication is really important. I know it can be tedious to track this sort of thing. So this happened this last week. My husband was going through all his files. Okay, he figured out that we hadn't gotten a bunch of these promo titles. So on the bottom, there's different reps from my Penguin Random House reps. So for each one of them, he had a file. This was Penguin. They had not issued $410 worth of credit. I just got an email while I was here in Institute that they were fixing that for us, and it was going to be issued this week. So it adds up. Again, so get copies of your indirect co-op reports from distributors. It's Ingram now. So this is how you get your Ingram report. It's in the Ingram content co-op reports. It's under the reports at the top if you're in iPage. And then you click on Ingram content reports, scroll down to the section called annual reports, and then click on the link view. And it's going to download a pretty large CSV file, depending on how often you order from Ingram. And I'm usually asking my rep, when is this report going to be available so I can give it to the publishers? Again, so there's a lot of data in that report. It's sorted by publisher. A lot of publisher reps that have to submit it themselves to their co-op person, and their publisher only want the data related to their publisher. So, every year, one of us always forgets, the Disney titles or the Chronicle titles might be kind of mixed in with the Hachette titles, and we have to pull out that data. It seems like it's a lot of work, but it's for the amount of money that you're going to get back, it's worth it. So useful tools and resources. Your publisher rep, you can just constantly ask them, what's available. Edelweiss has made it a lot easier for me to print out reports and tag things, so I can give those reports to Mir so he knows which titles I've ordered. He doesn't go on to Edelweiss that much anymore because I do all the front list ordering. He does the backlist ordering. So I want to make sure that he knows which titles I've ordered that we're supposed to be getting co-op for. I also love Edelweiss Analytics. We have I guess it's called Summit version, the higher version. I can't, it's so invaluable. Just being able to have analytics to see what sells and all the different reports that we've used. If you have questions, we can talk about that part afterwards. Your point of sale system, checking your purchase orders for the minimum buy requirement. Scholastic has newsletter co-op. It's changed over the years, but oftentimes it's as long as you purchase 5 copies, you can get $50 co-op for that one title to advertise, up to $500. So oftentimes I'm going back in to see what I've ordered. They're looking, so I should say, they're all looking for front list. They want to see what you're doing to advertise front list titles. Email marketing tools, social media. So this has been a little bit of a change. A lot of stores are doing more Instagram and that sort of thing. It's been interesting to see. Some places definitely want to see that, and other people prefer that traditional email newsletter. I feel like if you're already posting it on your Instagram, you might as well book it as co-op. And then taking photos of your displays and sending them to your reps. So these are ABA education and website resources. We use Indie Commerce. I love Indie Commerce for the fact that I'm not creating and doing my own HTML work, that it'll pull all the book information in. I don't have to, in the past, prior to us owning the store, they had an old HTML website. It was pretty old school, but having to download all the photos and then upload the photos and then formatting everything, Indie Commerce to me has just made my life for co-op so much easier. And the other way I look at it is that for me, it's an advertising cost. I don't equate my Indie Commerce. I know everybody's got their opinion. I don't equate my website as am I getting enough online orders to pay for the website? I'm looking at it as it's advertising. Everybody needs a website. Then the co-op is helping to pay for that website. So if you're interested, there's some deals with the Indie Lite for people that maybe had Baker & Taylor previously. The Book Buyer's Handbook is really great because it lists a lot of the co-op policies for all the different publishers. Again, if it doesn't make sense, ask your publisher rep. And then I think it was in October, there was a marketing meetup that was just on co-op, and that there is a recap of that on the BookWeb website. And then the pre-order calendar. So if you already have titles that you're promoting for pre-order, you're advertising a book. You might as well ask for co-op for that. If it's going out in your newsletter, ask for co-op. So again, keep copies of your claim letters and advertising. They said, some publishers say they'll audit you. I've never really had that issue, but the reason why I like to keep track of my stuff is, again, if I didn't get that co-op credit, I'm going to go back and say, hey, just following up on that co-op claim that I sent you. And then keep a document with your yearly co-op notes and update them for each publisher. Susanna at Oblong Books and Music has a document called the Co-op Bible that she shared at the marketing meetup. She was gracious enough to share it with us with her 2019 updates. But again, there is a little preface to this that you want to make sure you're checking with the publishers, and because it changes from year to year. So the rest of this is specific co-op information for publishers. Again, this is going to be available online. So we have about 20 minutes for questions and roundtable. In the back there.
Yeah, so because of our store's arrangement, most of
of our displays are only up for about a day. Do those still qualify for display co-op if they're only up for 24 hours?
So the question is, with the way her store works, their displays are only up for about a day. So does that qualify for display co-op? I can't speak on the behalf of the publishers as whether they would take that or not. But I mean, you're advertising a book. It's out front and center. I don't know how your system works, but I would talk to your publisher rep. If they're expecting more, then maybe you figure out something else that works for your store.
I have 2 questions. One is, can you get co-op if you have multiple publishers in your display? Like if we do a display for movie, we have one that's called, the Read Box, and we have different movies coming out, but there's different publishers. Can you claim co-op with that?
So the question is, can you claim co-op with multiple different publishers in a display? So the example she gave is that she has a movie display, so it's not just one specific publisher. And I would say, at least in my opinion, yes. So when I send out my publisher reps copies or photos that I've taken of our new release tables, all of our new release tables have different publishers on it. It's not just singly one publisher. Sometimes there's a display co-op deal where you get a whole entire fixture and they expect you to have just their publisher titles. That's a little bit of a different situation, but again, ask your rep, For the automatic co-op, it's great for my reps because they can see that we're advertising their books. They can share it with specific editors, marketing people. So even though it's mixed in with other publishers, you're still having their titles up front and center so your customers can see it.
And the other question I have is, on the social media, like your Instagram and Facebook, how do you keep proof of that to give to claim?
So the question was on social media, how do you give proof of that to claim? So again, I showed a co-op letter where it was a link to my website. You can just give them a link to your Instagram. Or you can screenshot it. That's the other thing, yeah. Over there in the back.
I have a quick question. We get the automatic co-ops, but do you guys separate your credits in your QuickBooks, or how do you keep that separate from your returns credits, your damages, things like that?
Okay, so this was a QuickBooks question about how we keep track of our credits, co-op credits versus damage credits. My husband will go through, and if it's a co-op credit, we have a specific QuickBooks category that's co-op. I would say, if you look at Abacus, there's going to be a difference in where you report it. Some people report it in their expenses. Some people report it against, what do they call it? So expense would be the advertising, cost of goods sold. So let me go back. Let's go back.
They recommend you put it in advertising, right?
So this is really interesting. There's always been a debate about this.
Well, it says it in I just did my
Right.
It says we recommend this thing.
But these seem different.
These
are cost of goods sold.
Yes. So
Profitable selling those books from that kind of co-op than you are from the display type co-op.
I'm gonna give my father-in-law's a tax accountant. So as you can see in the industry report, there's the book-specific cost of goods sold, where people are reporting it, and then there's the advertising and promotions. We book so much co-op that my father-in-law prefers that we don't do it in advertising and promotions. Advertising and promotions is considered an expense, and if we had booked it there under our advertising, because I don't pay a lot of paid advertising, it would be a negative expense. So he prefers that we do it in our cost of goods. Now, we could probably go around and around the table about this, but that's what our store does. Doesn't mean your store necessarily does that. I feel like that's a question that it should be debated. Yeah.
I think if you're putting it in advertising and promotions, but you have a separate something for it in QuickBooks that says it's co-op as opposed to as opposed to return credits or damage credits or something like this. Those all, I know in QuickBooks I book all those to inventory.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
But if you have something separate that you're booking that to, even though you're putting it as a credit there, that you can separate it from the rest of the inventory stuff, then it's easier to report on when you do abacus, and probably a little easier to identify.
Yeah, so I think, I'm going to try to condense this question and repeat it, is if you're doing this and you're doing it for abacus, having a category that's called co-op will make it easier for you to report those numbers versus getting those numbers mixed up with just general credits or credit memos that you're getting for damages. Does that make sense? I can talk QuickBooks after this. Okay. So yes, we have a category that's specific to co-op in our QuickBooks, so we know that those specific dollars when I run reports are co-op dollars.
This might be just very naive, but I've only been doing the book buying for like a year, and I still am figuring out all of this stuff. I'm so used to seeing the promo co-op on Edelweiss, buy 6 copies, and like that was my interpretation of what co-op was. So you saying newsletter over and over, I'm like, where does that even exist?
Okay.
Is that all in the in the book buyer's handbook in the fine print?
So the question is, or the thing was, she's a buyer. She's been doing it for a few years, and so she mostly just sees the promotional co-op titles. You get to buy 6 copies for $25 or $50, and I've been talking about newsletters. So where does that appear? It does appear in the convoluted policies. The other thing I ask is I specifically just ask my rep, do I have newsletter co-op available? Do I have pool co-op available? Tell me what I have available. Just ask your rep. That's how I discovered, oh, there's an extra $1,000 for Disney, and that's addition to the Hachette. And then, well, this was a long time ago. I think it was Weinstein Books. They used to have some extra newsletter co-op. Also, that was separate from Hachette co-op, even though I'm setting all those co-op claims to my one rep, because they distributed all those under Hachette. Does that answer your question? Okay. Right over here.
So we primarily order through Ingram because we do it every day. And so I can go to that report, but I still have to set up the accounts with the publishers. And we have the accounts, but we don't have the co-op, right? So can I do last year's? Is it too late?
Okay, so the question is, or the statement was, I primarily order from Ingram, but I do have publisher accounts that I don't necessarily use a lot. Can I still claim from last year, or get my report and then start claiming for this next year, I think?
And also, would they then let me do, because I'm getting it from Ingram instead of them, can I still do the newsletter type and things like that? Or do I have to get the books from the publisher to get that?
That's a good question, because I was taught, because we order so much front list from the publisher. So her question is, does she automatically get the newsletter because she has an account with the publisher? I would go back to your publisher rep and say, hey, here are my indirect numbers. Can you tell me what I know I don't order a lot from you guys right now, but can you tell me, do I have any other co-op available? I've heard there's newsletter co-op. Can I use that newsletter co-op? That's where the rep is really helpful to answer those sort of questions.
On that, I think your co-op for like the newsletter, that is a percentage of the sales that you do through the publisher. You can claim it against anything, but the percentage comes from only the sales that you are doing through your publisher, right?
Okay, no. Yes and no. Okay. Again, it varies from publisher. So I'll use HarperCollins as an example. They went to the automatic co-op percentage. They were going to get rid of newsletter. I don't remember how many years ago. A lot of us complained because the automatic co-op, you had to have X amount of sales per year. Well, if you were a smaller bookstore, there was no way you were going to get X amount of dollars per year. So they went back and said, yes, you can still participate in this program and you can still do newsletter co-op. So I can't stress like going back to your reps and saying, can you explain this to me? Can you And if your rep is not the right person, then say, who's the co-op person that I should be talking to about this? Because on HarperCollins, I have $1,000 newsletter plus whatever they're issuing. And like I said, it varies from year to year, from publisher to publisher.
Isn't it a percentage of your sales that you're co-op?
The percentage of it's two different. So the question isn't it a percentage of your sales? So I think we're again talking about two different kinds of co-op. There's newsletter co-op, and then there's the pool co-op. So the pool co-op is a percentage of your sales. The newsletter co-op is not. It's separate. It's an addition to that.
But it's still a credit against what you owe them.
Yes.
If you're not buying from them, they're not going to give you money.
Right.
Right? Like if you don't have a balance on your account with the publisher, they're not just going to give you money. They're just giving you credits against your balances on your accounts. With
Okay,
them.
well, we do order some books from them, which would probably work.
Right. So the statement was, you need to remember that this is a credit to your account. It's not actual physical cash. It's a credit that can help pay down your bills that you owe them. So if you're not buying a lot from them, then you're going to have this credit that's sitting there that you're not necessarily using to pay against invoices that you owe them. In the back.
For the automatic co-ops, are those something that you need to sign up for, or okay?
So the question is, for the automatic co-op, is that something you need to sign up for? So yes, I think it's usually in I want to say January or February, your rep will let you know, hey, it's time to renew your, whatever they're calling the program. I always just remember Macmillan. It's called MIP, M-I-P-P. I don't remember what it stands for. But my rep sends me a thing that says we need, you've already automatically been re-enrolled in the MIP program. We're going to automatic credit your account. Simon & Schuster and Random House usually send out I guess you want to call it a survey, to show that you're re-enrolling into their promotional program. Again, ask your rep. But yes, you have to re-up that every year.
You had said earlier that you would hold on to your co-op dollar or credits until January. It's just sitting on that invoice that they send you as a credit. You're just not accepting it until later.
So the question is that I'd mentioned that I was just sitting on the credit to pay invoices later. So yes, if I get it earlier, really it just it just depends on what, again, accounting, QuickBooks, what publisher statement I'm looking at or that my husband's looking at, and what credits he's going to apply, which ones have come in. We try to bill out, like I said, we try to bill out credits later in the year, or bill co-op claims later in the year, knowing that those credits would come in January, February, March.
So even submitting that co-op, you kind of hold on to it a little bit.
Yes. So I should say most publishers usually want you to submit your claim within 60 to 90 days usually of you doing your promotional, whether it's a newsletter or putting it up on the website or a display that you did in the store. There is that time frame. And then usually publishers also have a deadline, I think it's March or April, for any co-ops for the claims for that previous year. Again, if you have more questions, we can also talk about that afterwards.
Is there any way to filter to look for co-ops in Edelweiss or no?
So the question is there a way to filter to look for co-op in Edelweiss? I would say it's really dependent on whether your rep has put that markup tag in there.
I guess I had another short question. If I'm brand new to trying to figure out co-ops, where would you suggest I start? Who has an easy process that I can start to get tiptoe into it?
I don't know if there's an easy process. If you're, yeah, that's a good question. I guess for me, I feel like newsletter is easy. For the publishers so the question is, sorry, this is being recorded. So the question is, what's the easiest way to start, or what should you start with first if you're new to this? I feel like newsletter co-op for certain publishers is a little bit easier because they can say there isn't necessarily a minimum buy for those. So if I've bought one copy of that book and I'm going to advertise it in my newsletter on my website, I'm still going to get that $25 or $50 for that. Versus with the promotional co-op, buying 6 is not always feasible for everyone. 6 copies of a book.
I've been structuring my book clubs around when I can get those promo credits. So yeah, when I know I'm going to be selling 6 of them, I might as well get 6 of, I don't know, this title looks passable. I'm sure they'll read it.
So the comment was that this particular buyer likes to kind of set up her book club selections around those promo co-op titles.
Jenny, when you say that probably the first company, probably the first publisher you should be working with is the one you buy the most from, because that's where you're probably going to see more dollars come back to you. So if it's a publisher that you order a lot from or on a regular basis, as opposed to the one that you order from once a year.
Yeah. So Valerie was commenting, it's probably easiest to start with the publisher that you order the most from than from someone that you maybe only order from once a year. Yes, I would say that's true also, because the more you buy from someone, the more you're going to start building up that, if it's pool co-op, for the next year also.
Can you talk a little bit about how you are keeping track, because we mentioned that sitting down once a month and kind of like going through this co-op reporting thing is probably a good habit if you're going to try to capture it all. Do you have a method that you use to kind of keep track of what you're going to report to them?
So the question is, do I have a method of what I'm going to track and what I'm going to report to them? I have, like Susanna, I have a list of what's available to me, and so I will decide what newsletter I'm going to do or what I'm going to put on my website that once a month. Or I hate to say it, sometimes it's like, ooh, we're getting close to the end of the year. What do I need to book? And I set aside a bunch of time, that would probably be more like what I call a power session, where I'm posting a bunch of co-op to my website, knowing that I'm going to claim, a little bit later. Maybe it's after Christmas. I take a week off after Christmas with my husband and usually go to visit my mom in Arizona, so I tend to catch up on a lot of that billing then. And then those co-op dollars are going to come through later on. Does that kind of answer your answer?
And I'm sort of guessing that each time you put something in your newsletter or whatever, you just have like a link to that newsletter. You have like something somewhere that says, "Oh, yep, I did this one in this newsletter at this."
Yes, yeah, I have a little. If I was better about it, I would update my spreadsheet every year, but I'm not. It's usually going back into my bullet journal like, oh yeah, I already did that. I really need to build that one out because I already put it on the website.
Okay, I'm sorry. I still don't get it. I really am having a hard time. You order January 1st, $500 worth of books. The publisher says the bill is due 30 days later. So you pay the bill. So you have to wait, send the co-op in to the publisher the next month or the next month to get back some of the $500 you paid. That's what I'm trying to understand, the co-op.
I think it would be better if we sat down together after this. I'll explain a little bit more. So the question is, I still don't get it. If you buy $500 worth of books and the bill's due, say, 30 days later, I guess the way you need to really think about this is co-op as a cycle and a process. So you're going to be consistently getting invoices that are always due, and you get a statement every month, right, of what invoices are due. The way you need to think about it is those co-op credits that you get. So it might not pay the bill that's due in 30 days immediately because you have to bill the co-op to the publisher. The publisher has to process your co-op claim. Then it has to go to their accounting department for them to issue a credit memo. And that credit memo either comes to you in the mail or shows up on your statement. And then you're taking that credit memo for the next statement or bill that you have, and you're applying that credit to that invoice, so you're paying less in cash. Does that?
That explains it, but you still get the bill from the publisher that says it's due in 30 days.
Mm-hmm. You do. The first time. Before you get your co-op credits. But once those co-op credits start rolling in, you can use those to pay your bills.
That's what's in my head. I ordered January the 1st. The bill comes February the 1st, and the publisher says, I want my money today. 30 days are up. So you pay the bill. Because you're supposed to. So
Then you
January You've ordered again, right? Or it's
but I ordered again and paid it again the next month for 30
Well,
days.
you'll have the credit.
You'll have the credit, though, for the first one.
It's that fast?
No.
Transaction. It's a
Bill,
bonus that
yeah.
you're not planning on, but she's
So I
telling
have
us
to
to
wait.
plan on it.
Yeah.
I have to wait for,
Yes. You have to wait for that credit, the credit to come through.
but I still got to pay the bill.
You still have to pay your bill that's due, but if that credit's coming in and you get a credit the next month and you have bills that are also due next month, you can use that credit to apply to that bill. We can talk separately.
Thank you for listening to Book to the Bookstore Education Podcast, brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. Additional educational resources can always be found on the ABA website at www.bookweb.org. Happy reading!